Thank you all for making it over to our session this morning. My name is Jeffrey Baum. I am the Executive Director of Michelson Philanthropies, and together with Philip Kim, the CEO of the Michelson 20mm Foundation, we're delighted to host you here today on behalf of Dr. Gary Michelson, the founder and co-chair of the Michelson Philanthropies network of foundations, which includes the Michelson 20 Million Minds Foundation, the Michelson Medical Research Foundation, and the Michelson Found Animals Foundation. And we couldn't be more pleased to be here and partner with UNITE to sponsor the convention this week and also to present programming. And leading off the programming today, we have one of our senior executives also, Chinwe Ohanale Agwu, heads our Michelson Institute for Intellectual Property, and she will moderate today's session on the path to R1 status. So please welcome Chinwe.
Thank you, Jeff. So we're really excited to have this conversation. I don't know that there are too many spaces where we get to talk about and talk with the people on the ground what it takes to do this amazing work. And I think that that's really important, that we give voice to the trailblazers who are on the ground doing the work, working with students, working with their assistants, getting the research and the knowledge out there. So what spurred this conversation is that a lot of HBCUs are interested in the Carnegie Classification of Institution of Higher Education, also known as the research rankings, right? R1, R2, climbing the ranks. And for those who don't know, those ranks tend to be very important, especially when you look at funding and where the dollars go and who gets supported and who doesn't. And until 2005, Howard University was ranked R1, and it fell off after some changes to the ranking classifications. And now there are no HBCUs in the highest tier, which is considered R1. R2 is high research activity. There's about 11 institutions there. And then after that, there are no more HBCUs accounted for in that system. Part of that is also that in the entire HBCU ecosystem, all 100 or so institutions have been awarded about 400 patents. But if you compare that to the University of California school system, 10 institutions, they have about 12,000 patents. So we want to learn a little bit more about what are some of the challenges that the researchers are facing, what are the opportunities, and also what is the great work, right? Because that's the real challenge. All of these rankings and all of these systems and reportings, they hide some of that. What is the amazing work that's being done in HBCUs that needs recognition, that needs to be bubbled up to the top, that the world needs to hear about? And so we're so lucky to have these wonderful researchers grace our stage today. Maybe some of you came because you're fans of their work. So it's going to be great to sort of hear from them about their journeys and what they're working on. So we're joined by Dr. Barney Graham, Dr. Erica Johnson, both from Morehouse School of Medicine, and Dr. Messina Morris from Morehouse College. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I think it is important for people to speak about their work and themselves and let them shine. So with that, I'd like for the panelists to first share a little bit about their background, not just your title, but how did you begin doing this work that you're so passionate about? And what are some of the things that maybe people might not know about the journey that brought you to where you are?
Y'all saw that? Good morning. I'm packaged joy. I'm Dr. Messina Morris. I am a senior assistant professor at Morehouse College. I am from Decatur, Georgia, so this is home for me. So welcome to my hometown. I am also the world's first Metaversity director, and you might say, what's a Metaversity? But it is where we made virtual reality the classroom. I am a trained biomolecular chemist, and I taught my advanced inorganic chemistry course in the spring of 2021 using immersive virtual reality, and since then, we at Morehouse College, along with 15 other faculty members, have taught over 44 courses using immersive virtual reality. And this fall semester, we are rolling out the first set of immersive virtual reality teaching assistants that are AI powered. And they'll be able to be used in the immersive setting, but they're also available on Chrome browsers. So we'll be rolling those out in history and education, in sociology, journalism, and with our Student Success Center. It is the first time that conversational AI TAs will be utilized in higher ed in this particular way. And I'm excited to be a part of this innovation. Now, I am also a Michelson IP fellow, a part of the HBCU Futures Collaborative. You might say, like, why is she here then? So I was a part of the first cohort, the inaugural cohort of the HBCU faculty collaborative, where we incorporated intellectual property into our classroom. So I've incorporated intellectual property curriculum from Michelson IP in chemistry and sociology and business, and across the college in about 10 other courses. So I've been integral in implementing that and making sure that students are aware of the changing landscape of IP as we go into this Web3 world and this fourth industrial revolution. And so it's really important to make sure that our young men at Morehouse College are on the forefront of that.
It's wonderful. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Erica Johnson. I'm an immunologist. I'm associate professor at Morehouse School of Medicine and co-director of our vaccine trials unit. My research is on mother-to-child transmission of viral pathogens, HIV, CMV, Zika, and most recently SARS-CoV-2. And I actually am Atlanta-born from College Park. We found a lot of connections up here alone, not only with the Morehouse connection, but, being from Atlanta, but also going to Clark Atlanta University. So I went to Clark Atlanta University for undergraduate, went to CAU, okay, find a way and make a way. Let me talk about that today. And then I went to Morehouse School of Medicine for my PhD. I was trained postdoctoral training at Emory University, and I stayed there. Emory also? Okay. Okay. And stayed on through assistant professor. And when I got my first R1, I said, okay, it's time to go back home. So I came back to Morehouse School of Medicine in 2020, and I've been there for about 4 years.
Okay, yes, I'm Barney Graham. I'm a trained physician and microbiologist, and I'm now director of the David Satcher Global Health Equity Institute at Morehouse School of Medicine. I started my career at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine and spent 20 years there, and then 21 years at NIH, where I ended as deputy director of the Vaccine Research Center. And I do vaccine development. That's what I've been known for, at least. And our lab developed the protein structures that are used in the newly licensed RSV vaccines, and also the spike protein design that's used in all the vaccines that were administered in the U.S. And so I filed lots of patents, some at Vanderbilt, more at NIH. And we just filed our first patent at Morehouse School of Medicine yesterday. So Dr. Johnson and I were the co-inventors on filing that. And so I've seen the systems, how they work at large universities, how it works in government, and now how it works in what I would say is a low-resource institution in a high-income country. And so I came to Morehouse because it is expert on equity, and what I saw during the COVID deployment of the vaccines is that our biggest problem is in access and uptake, and the unequal access, not just to COVID vaccines, but now to RSV vaccines, is what drove me to want to spend the rest of my career at Morehouse School of Medicine, where in the mission statement, it mentions health equity and health justice.
Thank you so much for those introductions. Now, before we go where I think people might expect us to go, which might be some of the challenges, I want to uplift some of what is happening in the HBCU space. I think that's the important context to set first. If you could talk to us a little bit about, first of all, why is it so important that HBCUs be part of this research community, right? This research ecosystem. Some may say, well, who cares, right? HBCUs are busy training other kinds of professionals. Why is the research space, why is it so important for medical research, immunology? Why do we need to be there? And then if you could give some examples of really important research that's being done within the HBCU space, and even if you want to expand it to other Black researchers, right? Because we also know that not all of our incredible Black researchers end up within the HBCU space. So talk a little bit about why it's important for us to be engaged in this ecosystem.
Hi, everyone. So I am at an undergraduate institution, and I'm old enough now where I have to take notes as I write, so just bear with me as I talk and write and listen. Okay. But the reason why it's so important is that at HBCUs, we do research that we care about. We do research that matter to our communities. This is the research that always falls in the gaps when it comes to international or national or even global type of research. We're talking about sickle cell research, right? Sickle cell primarily affects African Americans, people of African descent, correct? But the research was stagnant for medications and drugs when it came to that landscape. Well, because no one was really looking to do anything different than what was status quo already. If it worked in the 70s, then it worked now, but that's not necessarily true. And so things like drugs and pharmaceuticals and other things need to evolve in our communities and be tailored to us, because now we have more personalized medical treatments and options that we're not privy to. And so that's part of it. But another one is, if we're training undergraduate students, we have 4 years to expose them to upper echelons of research where they can go and be competitive in the space at the bench. As a chemist, understanding that we need more scientists that see things on a molecular level. COVID was a crisis, and thank God we had someone that understood and had already done some of the legwork to get us out of that crisis. But what we are facing is that students are not going in STEM at the same rate. And the reason why virtual reality was so important for me to incorporate was to make sure that we increase that visual spatial intelligence of our students so that they wouldn't be afraid to take on complex situations and things that they didn't know anything about. Because see, I could see molecules, y'all. They can't see molecules, so I tried to get them a little tool to help them. But to be honest, we've got to do the research that we care about. We've got to have our own ecosystem together, and we've got to have the infrastructure to be able to support it as well, because there's some really important work happening, and we have some really innovative, not just professors, but students who are not being able to do the scholarship because the infrastructure and the resources are just not there. It's not for a lack of, and it's also that the research is happening, but it's not able to be published because you can't get to that because there's so many other tasks that have to be handled. So you're putting out immediate fires, and so it's hard to look further down the road, and you're trying to do both at the same time. And so we really do need to put together and have a coalition where this kind of cutting-edge research can be harbored, harnessed, and cultivated in these spaces.
Yeah, and I will just kind of co-sign that, because I do agree that researchers at HBCUs have a unique lens, again, to see those gaps, especially when it comes to health disparities. in the space of the vaccine-related trials that we've been a part of, I think that Morehouse School of Medicine, we implemented our vaccine trials unit in 2020 with the onset of COVID. And I think it was really important for us to be involved and at the table because we have this unique relationship in the community where, especially with the mistrust that goes on, we're able to not necessarily leverage, but be able to tap into communities that we're already serving to get them involved in our clinical trials. And I will say with just this last year alone, we've started some pediatric COVID trials, and our trials are 100% enrollment of underrepresented minorities. That's not what you're going to find elsewhere, but I think it really is a success story for units at Morehouse School of Medicine and other units across the United States in HBCUs, and the ability that they're able to really increase representation in studies and in trials that impact diseases, especially that impact our communities.
I just think that needs it.
I think I remember the question. So I'm just going to tell you one of the reasons why I'm at Morehouse. And that is because of what I've seen, that the equity won't change until we have different decision makers. Until we diversify the workforce, and not just the workforce, but the leadership of the workforce, you won't have enough diversity of judgment to really make the kind of decisions you need to make to change the 11-to-1 ratio of HIV-infected women between black and white, or the ratio, I think, of 3-to-1 preeclampsia. Maternal health is a devastating problem in black women. So until you get a focus on that, and that requires leadership. And my experience has been that, and I'll just use the COVID vaccine as an example, Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett is a young African-American who's now an assistant professor at Harvard, T.H. Chan School of Public Health. She worked with me since high school. She always wanted to be a scientist. I tried to get her to go to medical school. She said, no, I just want to be at the bench. And so she got her PhD at UNC and came back to my lab in 2014. She was focused on coronaviruses from the time she came back to the lab in 2014. She wanted to work in an area that wouldn't be so competitive. She didn't want to be an HIV. So, she was building her career around coronavirus biology. And so when we had already shown that a way of designing and delivering coronavirus spike protein could protect from lethal challenge in animal models, and we kind of knew what to do already. We were already in a position to do that when COVID came in early 2020. And so it was Dr. Corbett who was instrumental, especially in those first 10 weeks of 2020, working with 3 other African-American students in my lab. And they did almost all the lab work that was needed to get the first phase 1 trial started for the Moderna vaccine. Moderna didn't have a big immunology program, and so NIH did the work, filed the paperwork, and did all the experimental work that was needed, and filed the IND to start that first phase 1 trial in March 2020. So a lot of people don't know that story, but what I've seen in my career is that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not equally distributed. Mm-hmm. And we have so many problems and so much technology now that could solve almost any problem you can think of, but we're dismissing and not seeing and not giving voice to maybe 30 to 40% of the talent that we have. And so we're missing that. I don't think we can survive as humanity without involving everyone. President Obama, I think, was the one who said, you can't win the game if half the players are on the bench. So that's the reason I'm at Morehouse School of Medicine.
I'm sure if we asked a second round, you'd probably be able to go into even more of the amazing work that's being done within the HBCU space. But then there's probably work that could be getting done, right? But for a variety of reasons, it's not. So to transition the conversation a little bit, I'm curious if you could share how different is it, do you feel, for researchers within the HBCU space to get the work done? Because we had a wonderful conversation with the panelists before this, so we got a little bit of a preview. And the work, right, is what fuels researchers. You're excited about the science, getting to do that work. But there was a little hinting that there are things that keep you from doing the work. So especially those of you who have had experiences outside of the HBCU space and can kind of compare and contrast what that looks like, if you could share a little bit about what are those different things that get in the way of your ability to do the work?
Well, I'll start off. I know there's a few, so I'll just, list one for me. And I did start my career at Emory University, and, I stayed there I was there for 13 years. And, there it was about the research. You didn't have many other distractions. I was able to, go to my office, write grants, the lab, and, and that was all great. But I knew that I really wanted to get back to Morehouse School of Medicine. I wanted to be, mentoring and be involved in the development of budding scientists. But, you come back and you do that, and that load is heavy, especially when you are, maybe you don't have the critical mass of researchers with R01s and, the funding to support students. So I went from having, one PhD student to now I have 3 PhD, 1 MD PhD, and it's a blessing to serve. I really enjoy that aspect of it. But it is also somewhat of a burden when you have a high teaching load, a high mentoring load. And I think that is equal across the board, where everybody is a little bit overworked, and it can lead to some burnout. But then, there are the joys that come from it as well. But then because of that workload, you're not able to, spend as much time doing the things that you need to do to progress your career. And so it's hard to kind of find that balance, between the two. So I will say that to me is one of the biggest challenges. It's just about making more of me, maybe tapping a little bit into AI to make it a little bit easier, but really just to kind of balance that where that may not be the case for my colleagues at other institutions.
Blowing up.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. It's interesting because having grants at an undergraduate institution is interesting because you only have students that are matriculating for 4 years. So when they come in, you don't really have them. You try to get them involved with research early as possible, but say maybe the summer of their freshman year is the earliest that you would get them. But really the summer of their sophomore year, you have 2 years with those students. Most of them are then studying for med school or professional school. They're trying to get to the next level, but they still need to level up on these skill sets. And so you have a rotation. The turnover is really, really high in these research spaces. So even to get a project off the ground, it may take her 3 years to do because she has people working on her TAs and all that kind of stuff, graduate students. It may take me 3 or 4 times as long to do because I don't have the manpower that's consistent. I have a heavier teaching load, all of those different things. And even R1 institutions, so like I have some mentors from R1 institutions, but they can't even help me with certain parts of the grant process because they have a whole machine behind them that does the parts that I am in the weeds doing. So we have to do the weeds of the administrative work in order to keep our grants. They have a grants manager that's able to do all of that, and they don't even know what the paperwork looks like, what I'm showing them. So it's hard to even get help inside your institution or outside because there's not an infrastructure there of support. And then there's no tech transfer office to help you with the innovation. So I've had processes on research that I've just stopped because I've been told by attorneys, hold on, just stop. Wait a minute, you're going too far. You might say too much, and you don't want to put that much out there, and don't publish this. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. I thought we were just And so then you're confused, and so you just kind of stop. You just kind of get analysis paralysis, and you get to a place where you're like, well, this doesn't even matter here. Does it even matter here? And then there is this disparity and kind of caste system within academia where we mistreat people who have the same degrees. So there is a lot of that. So when Dr. Graham talked about changing in leadership and decision makers and diversity of judgment, the way that you got your PhD and the way that you were treated towards your tenure, or the way that you were treated within your process where you didn't get mentored and you got mistreated, is not the same way that you should treat other people as they're coming in. If you knew that that was a problem, then why would you treat people the same exact way? And so I push back on the lack of humanity that I see in the academic spaces. And this just doesn't happen at HBCUs, but it's more apparent at HBCUs because there already is not a mentorship infrastructure that is in place. There is already not a machine behind you. And so you have a lot of pressure that is on people who had career dreams, but also had hopes of making impact, that then don't have the support. And it does lead to burnout, but it also leads to the great exodus. So you see so many people who are just leaving the profession because it's not even worth it anymore. And I mean, that's just the honest truth, is like, I'm pushing up against something that is bigger than me. And that's just the truth of the matter.
Okay, I was an R01 and NIH contract-funded investigator at Vanderbilt for a long time before I went to NIH. And over those 21 years at NIH, we ended at the Vaccine Research Center with a budget of about $200 million a year and almost 600 people doing everything you needed for vaccine development. And I didn't have to write grants during that time at NIH. And so I was really free to do whatever I thought needed to be done. And we had enough staff and money and equipment and renewed equipment and repaired equipment and replaced equipment to do all the things that we needed to do. It was really just a matter of execution. And so I led a pretty privileged scientific career all the way up to now. And I want to be at Morehouse School of Medicine, and because I want to see things start changing. And there is a large talent pool that surrounds me now that I want to see thrive. And what is it going to take for them to thrive and have a chance to even do some of what I was privileged to do, just freedom of thought and activity? Well, first, you have to reduce the tuition debt. The medical students there are graduating with unbelievable amounts of debt. And until you do what NYU and Einstein and now Johns Hopkins and University of Hawaii have done, where you eliminate medical student debt through endowment, those students that want to do public health and want to do science don't really have the option of doing that, because they have to figure out how to make $300,000 just to get started. So reducing tuition debt is one big thing. The other thing that you've already heard is the administrative burden. The infrastructure for the grants management and the finances and the animal care and the on and on and on come largely from indirect dollars that come through NIH grants. And those are negotiated by the university. I think Vanderbilt used to have about a 65% indirect cost rate. So every time I got $1, Vanderbilt got 65 cents. And what happens at HBCUs, because you don't quite have the critical mass of workforce, is that you're often found in a situation where you're a subcontract to a larger university. Well, who gets all the indirect cost dollars? The main top contractor. So if you don't distribute the indirect cost dollars into the subcontracting groups, they will never be able to build the infrastructure that those dollars are meant to build. And so it actually increases the disparity over time. every time an HBCU is a subcontractor to a majority white institution, actually to help them check a box to make them more likely to get their grant, that increases the disparity between those two institutions because one gets all the indirect cost dollars and the other gets a subcontract. So that system of indirect cost dollar distribution has to change if you really care about any kind of equity.
I want to just
Add on the ideal of the machine, right? That's the one thing I think when I came in from Emory to Morehouse, my expectations, I came in like, okay, I have a grant, so who's going to do my budget? Who's going to do this? And it's like, you know. Where's Cayuse? Who's going to put it in there? You know, and we have talented people around us, but it's just a lean, mean fighting machine, right? So it's the one of this, the one of this, the one of that, instead of the 10 that are waiting to provide this service. And so to me, that has been the hardest part. And even just the ideal of, I want to get some EM work done. I could walk down the hallway, at an Emory, but here I need to develop us up with someone else and figure out the money and pay a crazy rate unless we have a relationship. And so it's things, we have the talent, we have the ideals, but to get it from start to finish can take me a year, but it may take someone else 2 weeks or so on. So that is the most frustrating part of it, is that I know that this is robust. I want to get this out. I want to provide this for my students, but it's just such a long, tedious process that sometimes I think researchers at more prominent, bigger institutions take for granted. And I know when I came here, I was like, oh, let's get it done. But I realized I'm still trying to get that done from last year, and it shouldn't be that hard.
So one of the things is I was a department chair of chemistry for 3 years, from 2019 to 2022. And so chemistry is an expensive major. And there is a lot of equipment and machines and things that need maintenance year to year to year. Literally, it's the most expensive major in a college. And what I found was by building a digital twin replica was a cost savings for us. It was like I needed to build places where I could train these students at the bench where they could see and understand, and I don't have to worry about the consumables. I don't have to worry about every year my budget being different. I don't have to worry about them being injured in the lab. Because I don't have all of the safety things in place. I mean, it's a whole lot of different layers that made me say, well, let me go take this into a different modality and even just try to see if it works. And I mean, it was a great success, and it has been a success, and it's still going on 4 years later, right? So I think there's promise there. It still really hurts my heart that, like you said, we have so much that we can do, and it's just that we don't have the infrastructure in place, the procurement offices, the grant process, the technology transfer, those kind of things. And sometimes we have to flip the model to see that something different might work. And I think maybe it's time to change a little bit of the model.
what was that again? You just got that part. You said that chemistry is expensive. Yes. So you do some anything, and you built a
digital twin replica of Morehouse College in the metaverse. So Morehouse has a digital twin replica of its campus in immersive virtual reality. And so we were funded by Southern Company, Qualcomm, Meta, and Unity Technologies, National Science Foundation, and T-Mobile are also partners. But we partnered with the EdTech company called Victory XR, built a digital twin, but also has a digital twin chemistry lab as well. And students could do their labs before they go in. They can practice putting together equipment, do practical stuff, run experiments, but learn techniques, be in different spaces and work with molecules differently. But that's been built out.
it's all simulated.
And some of it is simulated, some of it's simulation, some of it is that they have to actually build. I flipped the classroom. It's a lot. It's a lot of different layers to it. But unitethemetaverse.com. If you look at their website, you'll see some of the work. Yeah.
I know there's going to be a lot of questions. I promise I will leave time for questions at the end.
Oh, yeah, I forgot we weren't taking questions.
It's fine. It's fine. So one thing I appreciate about our panel is, one, just being very honest about the reality. I mean, we started this with the amazing work that's happening. So it's not like they've stopped. It's not like they've given up, right? That's the spirit of the HBCU ecosystem. You're not going to give up. But we do need to talk about where the challenges lie. And I'm happy that you started talking about the elephant in the room, which is the finances, right? So we hear these statistics all the time. HBCUs get 178 times less funding than their white counterparts. And then I started with, 400 patents to 12,000, 100 institutions versus 10 institutions. And someone may ask, well, okay, why doesn't the institution just fund your research? Like, why don't they just put money in there? Why are we talking about grants and all these other things? So could you talk about how does the financing work for research? Because I think if you're on the outside, you just think, okay, well, you just go to a school, the school has all the equipment, you come up with a great idea and you go into a lab. But there's probably a lot that goes into it. And I think it'd be helpful to sort of talk about how does that financing happen and what are some of the challenges with navigating some of the financing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for starters, as a researcher, you kind of build your effort, right? You teach some of your effort, you get your grants, which provides a lot of your effort, or it may not. A lot of people end up teaching more to provide more for their effort, and then it takes them away from the research side because they don't have the time to do the research because they have to get the time in teaching and mentoring and so on to provide that effort. I do believe, and I really sincerely believe, that there needs to be more money specifically for HBCUs. Because, like I said, we are able to see the gaps. We have a unique talent. We have a unique perspective. We're serving our communities. But the playing field is not level. And because of that, we do need to put more endowments, more monies to just build the foundation so that we can have the same access and to really perpetuate the research that we are doing. Because if not so, like I said, I think I see this a lot at Morehouse School of Medicine, where I love to be there, and I do feel like, because we are a medical school, there's opportunities for teaching, but a lot of times that will take you away from the research aspect of it. But then when you have lower research, then you're not able to provide those resources for the students, the training opportunities for the students. So I do think it's important that we really prioritize the funding for HBCUs specifically so that we can level the playing field.
Well, I think it's all about money. It's all about financing. If you really want to change equity, you have to put some dollars in. And Harvard, I think, has a $54 billion endowment, and Morehouse has a little over $100 million endowment. That means they don't have the freedom and flexibility to bridge grants. They can't reduce tuition debt. I think everybody here probably knows the statistics, but on average, the average household wealth in the Black community is 1/6 that of the white community. So the alumni support, the alumni start with this huge debt. And so it just perpetuates the inequity. As you keep going, even with alumni support, everything keeps growing farther apart. And so when an HBCU gets a wonderful grant and gift of $1 million, its sister majority white institution will get $100 million. And so, and of course you're grateful for the million, but it's not changing the system. There is a systematic behindedness that has to be made up. Otherwise, the gap is going to continue to keep growing. And as research evolves, as science evolves, there is so much opportunity right now. There is so much technology that can solve so many problems, and taking the talent in the HBCU systems out of the game, I think, is it's bad for everyone.
One of the things that I see is that we know how to be poor. We don't know how to be rich. We don't know how to gain wealth. We don't know how to attain it or sustain it. And that is the problem. So we know how to operate with limited resources. We know how to rob Peter to pay Paul. We don't know how to go after the big funds, demand that money come to us, get that $100 million, and make it work to make a difference. That's the blueprint that we don't have. Even when the funds do come in, there's so many immediate fires that we have been kicking the can down the road from that we can't even put the money towards the futuristic things that we need. That's why we need an influx and an overflow. It's not that, oh, we just want more because we've been under-resourced and, oh, we want more. No, but we need to play catch-up. We playing catch-up with 20 generations of oppression. We playing catch-up over trying to get innovation to take us a little bit further than we've been before. And you can't play catch-up just giving us enough to make sure that we meet the grocery bill every end of the month, the light bill every end of the month. Like, we need something to be able to bank and say, hey, I got something in the bank here. Now I can go and hire talent. I can go get the professors and pay them, because what people don't really understand is that they think, oh, you're at a prestigious HBCU. You must be bringing in the big what? Who? What dollars? Educators make everybody everything, but educators are not respected, and we still get paid less than folks do in the school system. So let's pay attention here. The way that we supplement our salaries is by grants. And if we can't bring in grants, we can't pay not only can we not mentor and advise and be 100% there, but we can't be there for our families either. So why is a professor that works at any of these institutions also working a second and a third and a fourth job? Why am I at Bath and Body Works? Or why am I at the school box? Or why am I at the mall on Saturdays and seeing my students? Because I have to. Because I can't get the grant funding. I can't get the research. I can't get the resources. My institutional salary is low. And so I keep hearing about there not being enough endowments and there being these discrepancies, but I'm a solution-driven person, and my thing is, like, at what point are we going to come up with the solutions? I sit on a lot of these panels, and I talk about the issues, but I wonder, when is there going to actually be an agency that hears what the actual truth is and not determine what they feel like the problem is and then solve it the way that they feel like needs to be solved? Hear what we're saying and solve it the way that we need it to be solved, and absolve yourself of the route of where it's going to go and thinking that we're going to mismanage it. We're mismanaging what we have now because it's all we have, and we've been playing Ring Around the Roses with it and musical chairs and swapping it and all that kind of thing. But if we had enough, if there was enough, then we would understand how to come up with a new blueprint of how to be wealthy and keep our ecosystem going instead of how to just be limited resources. Yeah, and
I do think that we have to remove a lot of the bias, that's out there when it comes to HBCUs, and, why someone may be more willing to give this big school $100 million after they just received $100 million from another, institution, and really kind of just publicize what we are doing, because really what we are doing impacts the community, like everybody, and it's not just about, yes, we care about health equity and health disparities, but all that builds the scientific knowledge and just expands it like across the board. And because if you just keep making it just geared towards one particular, like the white man, everything is geared towards research, medication, personalized, no ideal of personalized message, generalized medicine. If you really hone in on to what the HBCUs are doing and what we're focusing on and the gaps that we do see, and that you see the importance there, you're really globally making a significant impact. So I think it's important for us to put that out there, keep advertising, keep talking about it. Jackson Hart study, the work that Howard has done at Morehouse School of Medicine. our president, I think, is amazing. I'm not just saying that because we're on TV, or the getting recorded, but I think she's amazing because she's really reaching around the United States to really pull key innovators in one localized area so that we're able to really look at the disparities related to cancer, the disparities related to cardiovascular disease, maternal health. So I do believe that what we all are doing, and a lot of us are doing it together because it's a lot of collaborative work that's happening between the HBCUs that are really, I mean, it can really transition, the way that we're thinking about diseases. And I will say, coming from Emory, I was kind of focused on, viral host mechanism, but then I got to Morehouse and I started hearing about, ancestry and environment and, structural racism and discrimination. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't even, it pulled back another lens of my work and the way that I can really apply it and look at it differently and really maybe make an impact that wasn't really, applicable to most and all. So I do believe, like I said, that is a big deal, is that we really need to promote our work, erase some of the biases. I know we take that training for NIH, get rid of bias, but there's still bias there. My students one of them was saying, well, if I see it's from University of UNCF or something like that she'll be like, oh, I know this is right. But no, it doesn't matter where it's from. You just have to know that that's a bias, remove it, and then hopefully we can be more equitable across the board.
So I know we could probably be here all day speaking with our amazing panelists. And I wish we actually had time to take questions. So I'm hoping we can do is, for those of you who have a burning question, you can maybe speak to the panelists, because we have to turn the room over for the incoming panel. This is the challenge with having a great panel, right? And having people that have so much insight. You can't squeeze it into 50 minutes. But we do want to thank you for your attention and your focus. And we especially want to thank our panelists for making the time. So with that, we thank you, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.